Hello viewers, and a warm welcome to the show this evening. I am your host, Chef Andy. Very importantly, before I proceed, I will begin by introducing a guest on the show today. You may of course have seen her maybe somewhere around the city, but very importantly, I would like her to introduce herself just for some of you to get a bit of an idea of what she's about. Julie?
Thank you very much. My name is Julie Nasuju, and I'm the chair lady of Royal Patches. And also I'm a model representing Vitiligo here in Kenya, and also a mother of 4, and also a DJ.
Thank you very much, Julie. Now, very importantly, before I proceed, I will of course introduce the ingredients for the dish of the day. We're going to be making a very simple creamy spinach pasta. And for this recipe, you will require some very few ingredients. So from the very end, you will require about a teaspoon of nutmeg powder, about a tablespoon of unsalted butter, 1 stock cube, and a few cloves of garlic. You will also require some Parmesan cheese, about half an imported lemon, a few pieces of pasta, about half a cup of some thick cream. You'll also require some nicely chopped up spinach, a bit of olive oil or some vegetable oil to cook with. You'll also require some milk, some water which will aid you in cooking your pasta, and last but not least, some salt and some black peppercorns to season with. But before we proceed, I will of course give you this chance to sit back, relax and unwind, and we'll catch you after a short break. Right, so we'll proceed to add those in there. Very important.
There's nothing else that has been added?
No, nothing else that's going in there.
Okay.
So once your water just gets to the boil, you just proceed to add your pasta.
Okay.
Hello viewers, and welcome back to the show. As I mentioned, for some of you who may have missed out, we pretty much began by introducing the ingredients. I've also introduced the guest of today, Nasuju, who will probably give you more details as to what she's about as we continue with the show. But we will of course start off very simply by recapping on what we'll be doing today. We're going to be making a creamy spinach pasta. Now this of course will entail a bit of spinach. For some of you who are feeling a bit fancy, you can also prefer to use Swiss chard, a little bit on the higher expense side, but it's also a very good alternative. I'm also going to be working with some cheese on this particular episode. So remember, if you're of course not very fond of having cheese, or you are allergic to any milk products, you can of course omit the use of cheese or the use of cream. I'm also going to be using some milk as well. So just to mention, it's not a fully vegetarian recipe, but I will of course share some very simple tips as we near towards the end of the show. Now, as we begin, Nasuju, you'll of course assist us by lighting up the burner.
Okay.
And now we're going to begin by making or boiling our water for the pasta.
Okay.
So you can light the one at the very top.
Okay.
Perfect. Now, to a big pot, proceed to add some water, which you'll of course be using to cook your pasta in. Making sure that you of course have quite a bit of adequate water there before you proceed to add your pasta. And to that we'll of course season with a bit of salt. And finish off by adding a dash of some olive oil. And all you're going to do at this stage is allow your water to come to the boil before incorporating your pasta. Now, Nasuju, maybe I can begin by asking you to maybe give us an idea of your brand and what it's about.
Okay, basically I'm going to start with what vitiligo is.
All right.
And vitiligo is a skin condition that affects the skin color. That is, the antibodies tend to fight my white cells, thinking it is a virus.
Okay.
The melanin cells.
The melanin cells, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It tries to like fight it thinking that it is a virus.
Okay.
That's why I have the white patches. So it's just a discoloration of my skin.
All right.
Yes.
And maybe for some of the viewers at home that may, of course, know about your brand and what you stand for, maybe you can also give them an idea of what that is about.
Okay. Mainly, Royal Patches is for boosting people who have vitiligo.
Okay.
Trying to show them that you can actually survive with this skin condition and accept yourself the way you are. For me, I started it as a model when I started taking photos and going to modeling shows and all that. And it kind of boosted me to accept myself the way I am. So basically, I decided, why don't I empower other people who have this skin condition, who feel that like they can't go anywhere or cannot leave the house because of the way they look.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very important. Now, and also a very, very quick question I can throw at you. I don't know if you've faced any kind of discrimination for your condition. Maybe for some of the viewers at home that may be feeling, maybe we have viewers out there that may think, they may actually believe or think that they're the only ones with the condition. Maybe you can give them some motivation. Maybe it's just something to keep them strong.
Yes.
Mainly,
I know when one has this skin condition, getting a job, especially in the food area or in hotel or in the front desk, it's kind of an issue because the first thing, someone judges you with your appearance.
Okay.
And it's kind of very difficult to go to places, but I would like them to at least the first thing to know, it's not contagious.
Okay.
You cannot get it by someone cooking food for you or someone touching you or anything. It's something that is autoimmune. It's inside the body.
Okay.
Yes. Your child can get it, but not anyone else. Not your spouse, not anyone can get it.
So for some of you who are watching, very, very keen point that Nasuju has mentioned. If you are, of course, also affected by the same, remember, do not live your life feeling discriminated or do not allow anyone to discriminate you for who you are. Some of people I've worked with in the industry as well, and I've also encountered it. There is a lot of biasness out here, and especially here in Kenya, I have also experienced it in some occasions that I also interviewed someone, and funny enough, they were actually not picked for the position, and they were actually more qualified than myself. So something we can also share with you guys at home, whatever condition that you're faced with, whatever, any particular illness that you're faced with, never let this, of course, come between you and your dreams. Do chase what you believe that is, what passion that brings you to whatever career you're in. And as I mentioned, you can, of course, be a brand ambassador. You can, of course, also speak out, maybe also follow Nasuju and hear of maybe what conditions that are also facing people of the same. And something maybe you can also try out is maybe also be part of it by also giving your contribution, be an active participant through the whole process. And maybe you can also share with them, maybe for some of them who may want to maybe be part of your brand, or maybe they want to contribute in a way, how are they able to reach you?
Mainly, I would suggest that you follow us on Vitiligo is Beautiful. It's still a page. And also it is it's a movement. For us, it's for people who have vitiligo, and I'm not the only person who's leading this. I have a friend, I can't call it, I call her my twin. I call her like my sister. Her name is Honorable Wangoinje. And for her part, she distributes sunscreen to people who have the skin condition. Because mainly they're affected by the burns, and especially when you're near heat, it kind of affects you. So you kind of need the sunscreen for you to survive.
All right.
Yeah. You can follow us on Vitiligo in Beautiful. Vitiligo is Beautiful, that is on Facebook, Instagram. And Royal Patches also is on Instagram. Yeah.
Perfect. So for those of you who've pretty much have access to social media, remember you can be able to recap, or you can be able to get through to Nasuju, and you can be able to hear many more details as to how you can be part of the movement and maybe also be an active member of the movement. Now, Nasuju, I don't know if you're a big fan of pasta?
I'm a big fan of food. I cannot say about pasta. For me, pasta is very light.
It's very light?
For me.
Okay.
Because I love to eat.
Now, something I pretty much wanted to convince you on the show is that pasta is, of course, a very nutritious alternative to rice or any particular starches. It's also very, very convenient, and it's also an inexpensive kind of a dish.
Okay.
Now, of course, through the show, I'm hoping I can convince you that you can actually be able to enjoy pasta, even for maybe a light lunch. Maybe some of you who are looking at options of making something light that you can be able to carry to work, or even a quick and easy lunch meal that is, of course, very inexpensive and also very, very convenient in terms of time. Now, we're going to start off this process very, very simply by grabbing a pot. And this is basically going to be the base for the dish, or rather the base for the sauce that we're going to be incorporating our pasta into. Now, to begin the process, we'll begin by pounding a few cloves of garlic. Now, my very, very simple technique of getting your garlic to ground a little faster is by adding a bit of salt. Now, what the salt does, it actually makes it very much easier for you to grind the garlic nice and fine. So begin by pounding down your garlic. And once done, just proceed to work your mortar very, very gently. Of course, the salt will do most of the grinding for you. That should take you anywhere between 20 to 30 seconds to achieve a very, very simple garlic paste. Of course, once done, be sure to clean out your pestle and your mortar. And we're now going to proceed to begin by heating up our pan, so we can also switch on the one at the top. Now, very, very important that I mention, garlic is, of course, a very, very good addition to your cooking. If you're, of course, very fond of using garlic, it's also a very, very good and nutritious way to keep your skin healthy, keeps your body functions very, very well. And for the gentlemen out there, it's also a very, very good way of stimulating your manliness. So if you're of course not a very big fan of using garlic, I would recommend that you do so. So we're going to start off this process by simply adding some oil into a pan. I recommend vegetable oil or olive oil for this process. I'm also going to be using a bit of butter for two reasons. It actually gives a very, very beautiful flavor to spinach, and it actually really coats it very, very well, making it very much easier for you to be able to enjoy your Swiss chard or your spinach without actually feeling the bitterness of the leaf. Right, now as we, actually we'll turn that on again. As we allow our pan to heat up, very, very simply, allow the oil to come to the heat for about 2 to 3 minutes. And to that we'll add our garlic. So I'm going to allow you to scoop that into our pot for us. And also very, very important to mention, there is, of course, ingredients that can substitute some of the ones that we're using on the show. For instance, you can, of course, use coconut milk if you're, of course, not fond of using cow's milk or goat's milk. For the cream as well, you can also substitute that by using coconut cream, which is, of course, a very, very good alternative for some of you that may be very, very strict vegetarians. And, of course, lastly, very important that I mention for the spinach, you can, of course, also use Swiss chard if you're able to find some. I know it could be very hard to locate Swiss chard in the local market, but you should actually be able to find some in the high retail stores next to you. Right, so as our garlic continues to cook, we're going to proceed to add our stock cube. So I'm using a regular Knorr stock cube. So you can proceed to give that a mix. We're also going to be adding a bit of our nutmeg powder. So I'm using about a teaspoon of that. And I'm also going to add a nice big knob of some unsalted butter. Right, now as you continue to cook down your stock cube, very, very importantly, you can, of course, add a little bit of water to that. And what this will do is actually going to help you break down the stock cube a little faster, and the water will also aid in making sure that you get those flavors beautifully mixing in your pan. Perfect. Now once your butter is melted and of course the infusion has taken about 2 to 3 minutes, proceed to add your spinach. Perfect. Now once that's done, what we're going to do is now mix that through. Simple as that, and as that continues, this will of course give you just enough time to allow for your water to get to its boiling point. Remember, very important that I also mention, if you're going to be adding your pasta, try and add it closest to the time that your base or your mixture for your base is actually almost done. This will of course aid in making sure that you of course also don't waste a lot of time during the waiting process, and that you can actually make your meal a little faster and save quite a bit of time. Now Nasuju will of course proceed to add our pasta in there. Right, I'll just grab that. Right, so we'll proceed to add those in there. Very important.
There's nothing else that has been added?
No, nothing else that's going in there.
Okay.
So once your water just gets to the boil, you just proceed to add your pasta.
Okay.
So very important that I also mention, a lot of you may of course be very curious to know how long it should take for you to make your pasta. My very, very simple instructions, or my very simple tip is, the best way to make sure that you get the best quality out of your pasta is maybe look at the directions at the back of the packet. If you can actually be able to turn the packet around, it normally gives you a nice breakdown of how to cook it on the pan or even how to microwave it. And it will of course give you every single step to follow. And you will of course always get the preferred texture and consistency that you desire, or the one that is actually recommended by the supplier. Now Nasuju, as we continue to cook the spinach, we're also going to be adding a few more ingredients to this. But I will of course take a very, very short break and allow the pasta to continue to cook. Allow of course for the spinach to also wilt down very, very gently. But when we do come back, I will of course recap on the pasta that will of course be cooked, and I'll take you to the last and final process of finishing off the base for your pasta. So please don't touch that dial. We'll see you in a little bit. Very, very importantly, remember the only way to tell how we did is actually by trying out the dish. So I will of course allow you to give that a taste.
Right.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just tuning in, remember you may have missed out on the introduction and some of the steps that we began with in making our simple creamy spinach pasta. But remember, you can be able to recap on this and many of the other episodes that you may have missed out in the previous episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel. That's BrandPlus TV Kenya. Now we'll of course jump straight into finishing off the dish. So we're going to begin by taking our pasta out of the heat. This is of course fully cooked. And we're just going to proceed to pour that into a bowl. So Judy, we can pour that in. So very, very important also to mention, if you of course have such tools as a strainer, these tools will of course always aid in making sure that you can actually cool off or remove ingredients that you're steaming up in a pot very, very easily. And for instance, just like we've done with this one, very important that I also mention the water is also quite nutritious, so you can actually be able to reuse the water. So what I would normally do at this case is I would just shake off that excess bit of water. And one simple tip I can also share, this is also a way of making sure that your pasta doesn't stick. You can easily just toss your pasta in a little bit of your oil, and this will of course make sure that your strands of pasta do not stick together, and that they actually stay nicely moistened up, and the oil will also aid in making sure that your pasta doesn't overcook. So once your water is completely removed, you can set that aside, and you can actually be able to incorporate that bit of water into your spinach. So I'm just going to add a little bit into that, and I can pour out the rest. Simple, huh?
Okay.
Right, so we're going to now proceed to finish off the base for our pasta for today. So as I mentioned, the spinach has actually been steaming up for about 10 to 15 minutes. I've added just a little bit of water just to make sure that we can actually have a little bit of that beautiful pasta water in there. Remember, the pasta water does contain very, very beautiful flavors, and it actually carries the flavors forward into your base for your sauce. And now, just to finish that off, as soon as your water just begins to simmer, we're going to begin by adding our cream, and you can mix that through. And in the same ratio, we're also going to measure out a similar portion of some regular room temperature milk. I'm also going to add that into our pot. And now we're basically going to allow this to continue to cook. Very, very importantly, remember to season. So we'll crush in some black peppercorns. And of course, just to finish that off, very important to remember to season with a bit of salt. And as that comes to its boil, I'm also going to engage my guest in a bit of conversation.
Okay.
Now, I don't know, Judy, if you're very fond of using cream when you cook.
No,
Not
actually, at least I've learned something today.
Now you've learned something new.
Yeah.
Now, one beautiful thing about using cream, especially if you're going to be cooking with it, one particular characteristic is it always makes the dish a little more filling. So as you mentioned, pasta is not so heavy. With addition of cream, it actually gets a little heavier. So you'll actually be able to feel the weight of the meal, even as much as the ingredients that we used for the dish are not very filling.
Okay.
So the cream is actually a way that we chefs normally use to actually create a base for a sauce, and it makes it a little heavier. So even for a small portion of pasta, you'll actually feel like you actually had a very big dish.
Interesting.
Very interesting, yeah?
Yeah.
Right, now we're also going to be incorporating a bit of cheese to this dish. So I'm going to just grate a few strips of some Parmesan cheese to our mixture. This will of course also give it just a bit of time for the cheese to melt into the mixture, and of course also combine the flavors, giving it just a bit of time to freshen up the flavor. And we're just going to give that a mix once more. Simple as that.
Let me ask, except for the flavors in the cheese, what else does the cheese do in the spinach and the milk? Because this is too much.
It's too much. Now, what happens is traditionally the way pasta dishes are enjoyed, even if you look at different kinds of cuisine, cheese is always a very good complement to pasta, and it's actually the traditional way that Italians have always had their pasta. So cheese normally combines, or rather it goes very, very well hand in hand with cream or milk, being that they're also products that come from animals. The same flavor carries through. So just the way you have a bit of milk in there, the cheese also complements it, and it actually, I would say, accentuates the dish. It makes it a little more fancy for some reason. Okay. Or for the same reason. So cheese is also, for two reasons, it actually is very nutritious. Remember, cheese also carries a bit of bacteria in it. And the bacteria that are present in cheese are very, very good for our bodies. They're also very good in such cases as fixing skin conditions. They actually give you a very, very good glossy skin. Okay. So you'll actually realize with a lot of people who consume cheeses or such dishes, such as creamy dishes, you'll actually realize that you may actually realize that their pores are not so much, I wouldn't say very open, but they actually have some kind of a waxiness to their skin. So it's actually a very, very good component. And as you also know that milk products also have calcium in them, which is also very, very handy for bone growth and construction of the body. Yes. So basically, by incorporating cheese to this, you're actually adding more nutrient to the meal. Okay. So in most cases, the term that we'd of course use in a kitchen would be calories. And I would of course recommend, even for those of you at home, if you're very, very strict on your diet, and maybe of course, maybe in between a diet that you're really trying to maybe fight weight, and maybe you're trying to cut weight.
Actually, I wanted to ask you that for a model, would you recommend this?
I would recommend this, but I would say probably space it out. I wouldn't say have the same of this kind of dish in the same week. Okay. So I would say maybe pick maybe one day in the week, and you can probably have something of the same maybe 4 times a month. That will actually be very, very stable. And of course, another thing is you can also have the same dish, but make sure that you also don't have too much of it at one sitting. So maybe for a portion this size, maybe you can split one into a dinner for today, and maybe have it as a lunch, maybe in a day or a day to come.
Okay.
So it's also a very, very good thing, because another thing is, even for modeling, you know, a lot of people take it the wrong way when you tell them to eat right.
Yeah.
And one tip I like to share even with the viewers at home, if you're looking at having a very, very beautiful balanced diet, try and make sure that it is, you know, make it as varied as possible. Use as many ingredients as you can find.
Okay.
But of course, do a bit of research, maybe find out what quantities are recommended by a nutritionist, and you'll of course always be able to keep your weight at a very, very stable
Great.
at a very, very stable rate.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, so now to finish off the pasta dish, as soon as of course your cream is cooked through, your mixture is nice and thick, all we need to do is proceed to add our pasta. So I'm just going to slide that into our pot. And of course, I'll allow you to mix that once more. Now, very important to also mention, once you add your pasta at this stage, remember your pasta is of course pre-cooked. But very, very important to mention, do not be tempted to overcook your pasta before adding it to this. It will of course continue to cook, and it'll actually become very, very mushy. Another thing also to mention is, as soon as you add your pasta, always make sure your temperature is at its lowest. This way you can actually of course make sure that you're also not going to overcook the dish as you continue.
Okay.
And then of course, last but not least, my very, very biggest beautiful secret in making a pasta dish, and something that also cuts the richness of the cream and the cheese, a bit of some lemon. So I'm going to squeeze it to that, about the juice of about half a lemon. And you can of course mix that through once more.
Yeah.
Oh, pardon?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, now, as I mentioned, a very, very simple and stress-free dish that you can be able to try out at home. Now, for this particular dish, you don't really have to wait any longer. Remember, it is very much a vegetable dish. As soon as you've, of course, cooked your starches and your sauce is also nice and thick, you can, of course, proceed to plating. So I'm just going to proceed to grab a plate. And we're going to simply proceed to begin to plate our very, very simple dish. So as I mentioned, Julie, very, very simple dish. I hope you'll actually be able to try this at home.
I will.
Yeah, please do. And send us some feedback when you do. So all that you're left to do is proceed to serve your pasta. So something I'll also mention, if you do actually come across such a spoon, it's also very, very handy when you're serving pasta. For two reasons. It actually allows for you to scoop the pasta without lifting the sauce. And actually with the teeth marks that are at the top, that actually allows for you to be able to hold the pasta. And you can actually also use it for salads. So maybe like if you're serving a fruit salad, for instance, and you don't want to scoop in that bit of water at the bottom, this is also a very, very good tool for doing so.
Okay.
Right, so all that we're left to do now is proceed to serve. So after scooping a nice generous portion, allow for any excess of the sauce to just pour out into your pan. And right at the point where the liquid actually stops dripping from the pan, proceed to just move the mixture right onto your plate. And just set that very, very simply right over the top. Proceed to scoop a nice smaller portion, making sure of course to allow the excess sauce to drip off. And this also helps in making sure that you also don't have a very dirty plate when plating.
Sure.
Right, so once that's dripped off completely, proceed to scoop that right over the top. And now all that you're left to do is just grate a bit of cheese right over the top. So a few slices of some freshly grated Parmesan are always a very, very good complement to any pasta dish. And remember, be sure to also use not too much, because you also had a bit mixed into the dish a little earlier. And all that you're left to do is crush over some black peppercorns. And you can of course drizzle just a little bit of oil over the top. And that is my very simple creamy spinach pasta.
Okay. So what happens to the soup?
No, actually what you can do is you can actually reserve this and you can actually separate the pasta from the sauce. And you can actually be able to add it to another pasta dish if you're going to make, for instance, if you're going to make another pasta in 2-3 days, you can actually allow that to cool off and you can actually store it separately and you can just reheat it, and after boiling a fresh batch of pasta, mix it in there and it'll actually save you the effort of making the sauce twice. And another trick as well is by keeping it and using it in a later stage, it's actually going to taste better because it'll pretty much have more time to develop flavors. Now before we finish, of course, I will allow for you to taste our dish and tell us how we did today. Very, very importantly, remember the only way to tell how we did is actually by trying out the dish. So I will of course allow you to give that a taste.
Right. But I don't like. So how long is this gonna take?
Take your time, take your time. There you go.
Thank you.
Right. How's the flavor?
It's tingling. Yeah, different taste inside.
Different taste inside.
But very good, very
good. You can actually be able to taste a bit of the cheese, a bit of the cream,
a bit of the lemon.
a bit of the lemon.
Yeah.
And it's not too spicy from the black pepper as well.
Yeah.
So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned, a very, very simple, a very inexpensive dish that you can also be able to try out in your very own home kitchen. From us, it's a very, very simple goodbye. But before I finish, I will of course allow Judy to say a few words, maybe in relation to how she managed to be with us on the show. So maybe Judy, you can tell us how you managed to join us on the show today.
Okay, thank you. I would request that you can join Chef Andy in what is cooking by just texting the code, the 5-digit code on your screen that is running down your screen, and he will be gladly to get back to you. But make sure you write your name, what you'd like to cook, and where you're from.
Thank you very much, Judy. So from us here at BrandPlus, thank you once again for tuning in. But do remember, we're always happy to also hear back from you. So do leave your comments, queries, suggestions, or even compliments on our Facebook page. That's BrandPlus TV Kenya. And if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, that's BrandPlus TV Kenya as well, I would suggest you do so that you actually are able to keep in touch and also be up to date with each of the dishes that we produce here on our show. But from us, it's a goodbye, stay blessed, and see you soon.
See you.